Hi, my name is Hilary Woods. I'm a stained glass artist and I live in Rochester, Minnesota. I'm honored to have been chosen as one of the artists participating in this exhibit. Reading all the biographies was incredibly inspiring, and the one that stood out the most was Clara Ueland. She did so much for Minnesota and for women in general. She fought for the suffrage movement, for equality, education, and children's rights. I'm going to share the highlights of her accomplishments in Minnesota history and the role she played in the passing of the 19th Amendment, in hopes that it will inspire you to learn more and come see the exhibit in person. Clara established the first free kindergarten in Minneapolis. In 1892, she campaigned for women to serve on the Minneapolis School Board. In 1901, she joined the Political Equity Club of St. Paul and the Minnesota Scandinavian Women's Suffrage Organization, which began her involvement in the suffrage movement. In 1907, Clara helped found the Women's Club of Minneapolis, a club that went on to raise funds that helped launch a public nursing program in St. Paul, one of the first in the nation. In 1912, she focused her efforts on women's right to vote. In 1913, Clara founded the Equal Suffrage Organization of Minneapolis. In 1914, she organized a suffrage parade in Minneapolis, which brought out 2,000 marchers. It was such a success that it led to her role as the president of the Minnesota Women's Suffrage Association, or MWSA, an organization that worked to secure women's right to vote. As the president of the MWSA, she put her organizational skills to work, and as a nod to her leadership, one fellow suffragist referred to her as the Moses who is leading Minnesota to the Promised Land. After the 19th Amendment was passed, Clara attended the first Congress of the League of Women Voters. That same year, she became the first president of the Minnesota League of Women's Voters. Clara Ueland was a true pioneer and one of the great women of Minnesota history. 100 years ago, the U.S. was ever-changing and dynamic. It was a time when women stood up and forever changed the world we live in. Stained glass is ever-changing. It's kinetic. Much like those times a century ago, the light and color changes depending on the surroundings and gives measureless ways to connect with each piece. My art is about light and color and the feelings they evoke. I add a modern touch to a centuries-old art form to make it my own through custom patterns and thoughtful use of color and texture. Using the Tiffany style of stained glass, I have created a stylized portrait of Clara Ueland that will evoke emotions and allow you to build a personal connection to her. I love creating my own stained glass patterns. For Clara, I used a profile photo of her wearing a large feathered hat as inspiration. The pattern itself took a couple of months to perfect. From there, I went glass shopping. Many people ask if I color my own glass to use, and the answer is no. Stained glass is purchased in sheets and can vary in size, color, and opacity. Once I had the glass, I traced the pattern onto contact paper, cut it out with special stained glass pattern shears, and placed the pieces strategically on the glass. To cut the glass, I use a ring saw rather than a handheld cutter, as it allows me to do far more intricate cuts with far less mistakes and broken pieces. After all the pieces are cut, I clean each one and adhere copper tape to the edges. By brushing flux onto the copper tape, I can then solder the pieces together. Once soldered, I clean off any chemicals and polish both sides. I take this extra polishing step before applying patina for a more uniform application. The final step is the last coat of polish. This step is important. It cleans, shines, and protects it from future discoloration. Once that is done, it can be framed and hung for all to enjoy. Thanks for your time. I do hope it piqued your interest and leaves you wanting to learn more about the rich history of these amazing Minnesota suffragists, and to visit the Landmark Center to see the finished artist renderings of these forward-thinking women. To see more of my work, please visit my website at www.theglassflamingo.wordpress.com. Thank you, have a great day, and stay well.